I do want women to know that there is an alternative to suppressing their bodies with hormones, that they can see their body as a good and they can live in that body holistically.
Totally. Oh my gosh. It's amazing.
Join co-hosts Jamie Rocci and Teresa Kenny as they educate women about the beauty of the feminine design and empower women to take charge of their health.
They're going to be so amazing. You're going to be so empowered by understanding your feminine genius and your hormone genius. I don't think I could live my whole life knowing this and not sharing it with anyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hormone Genius Podcast. Today, Teresa and I are going to be talking about a little thing, but a big thing called puberty. And we've had people on our show before and talked about kind of the nuts and bolts of the phases that young girls go to into, childhood into womanhood. We've talked about that. We've talked about the Cycle Show, which is a really great program offered by Guiding Star Project. So Carrie Biedner, wasn't it? Teresa came on and talked about it. Great. Go back and watch that episode. Listen to that episode, rather. But this episode is personal because my daughter, she got her first period. She does not want me announcing that over the podcast world. But leading up to her first period, I constantly was asking myself, when is this first period going to arrive? Like, when is it going to happen? So I find it fun and interesting, Teresa, to journey alongside our listeners, as my seasons of motherhood change because the seasons of my children are changing. We learn different tactics and ways to handle things and red flags and green flags along the way. And we can know and read about a lot of things. But until these things happen to you, do you really actually begin to truly understand the concepts? So that's why I want to talk about puberty today, Teresa. I was invited to speak at a mom's group a few weeks ago, and I gave a talk about puberty. And so that's what kind of inspired me to bring this to the podcast world. Again, not necessarily all the science, although we'll talk about the science of puberty, but talking more about really to the women and the mothers who are listening to this podcast thinking, is there something actually wrong with my daughter? Is it her hormones or is it something else? And I personally have been in that boat. And so again, and it's not something that I think I don't really hear anybody talk about that, Teresa. I don't hear people say, oh, really, it was something else. It was this other big thing. Everyone always just is quick to say, oh, it's just hormones. Oh, I'm really worried about my daughter. I'm really worried about this and that. Oh, it's her hormones. It's almost a form of gaslighting accidentally.
Yeah.
So that's really what has inspired me, Teresa, to make this a topic of our podcast today.
Well, I think it's amazing to talk about. I had just done an Instagram reel on the beach. I don't know if you saw that one, Jamie, where I did talk about kind of the last kind of thing that I think women really need to talk to their daughters about before their first period. And yeah, you're totally right. I mean, I always tell my patients, if I've experienced something, I feel better about being the expert on it.
Yeah.
It's hard to be an expert on anything that you don't really fully, have some personal experience with.
Yeah.
And I have two daughters. They're both through puberty. And I think, of course, you learn if you have more than one daughter, maybe what you did right and what you did wrong with the first, and then you adjust. And I know a lot of women worry about it, just making sure they're preparing their daughters well, or want to know what to look for and all the things, or they're worried about the emotional changes and what are we going to do if she gets all, PMS girl and all this.
Yeah.
I think a lot of women wonder about that as well.
Yeah.
And they, it's kind of hard to manage all that. And yeah, I definitely, for myself, and it's funny when you can become an adult, it's like everything's so in the past. I don't have this vivid memory of puberty. I mean, I remember my first period. I remember it was during a basketball game in 5th grade. I'm pretty sure it could have been 6th, but it might have been 6th. And I remember this is the only memory that I had white shorts on. So that was the thing. And that I needed to wrap, I think my mom probably, or somebody gave me a sweatshirt to wrap around my
Oh,
shorts. And so that's my only memory. And after that, I have no idea. Did I get my
yeah,
period every
interesting.
month? Did
Oh,
I don't remember it being a big deal, which I suppose means it was probably normal overall and didn't
right,
cause me much distress because I would have remembered that.
right.
So yeah, it's just, like Jamie, you said, like it kind of makes you reflect and really just think about your own personal experience with it.
Totally. I'm gonna share my story, okay? It's so funny. I mean, so as a young girl, and I think I've shared this before on the podcast several times, I just was like very uncomfortable. I didn't like people to look at me, see me. I hated wearing dresses. I did not want any attention. I'm the middle child of five, but what's so funny now is that that's like so not my personality. I'm okay, like, speaking or being seen. And so, but when I was little, like totally the opposite. I didn't want any attention on myself. And so I was mortified when I got my first period, not because I got my first period, although one might think that would be the mortification feeling of it, like, oh, I got my period, what do I do? No, it was how my parents would respond to me. It was like the social, familial sort of like announcement, or in private even, to my mother. And I knew what would happen. And what I knew what would happen is actually what happened. But my mom made a big deal about it because she was so excited. She was so excited. And I'm like, no, like that was the one thing I didn't want. It's the one thing that did. And I'll never forget it. My mom was like, this is reason for to celebrate. And again, to all the moms group, she's crossing off all the check boxes. She's making sure I'm feeling affirmed. She's celebrating. But personally, my personality, I was so petrified and embarrassed. So she took me out for Chinese. And I remember the exact Chinese restaurant. I remember the booth that we sat. I even remembered what I ordered,
Wow.
Teresa, and it was the worst teriyaki chicken of my life. I'm like, oh, it's like I was sick to my stomach. It was the worst. Like,
That
you know,
solidified your period memory.
yeah. And it's like I walk into that restaurant and I'm like, everybody knows. No one knew, but everybody knows. My mom is taking me out for dinner because I got my first period, and everybody knows, like in my head. So, anyway, it's funny because in this world of celebrating the feminine genius and our, womanhood and all these things, which is true, and I want to celebrate that. There are some girls who really just want you to be more private about it, not
Yeah.
because they're ashamed, although I can't say I personally was ashamed. I was just really embarrassed, and I needed it to be more, maybe more nurturing,
Yeah.
and more private, and maybe that would have been a little better for me. So, right off the bat, Teresa, I would say if I was going to give advice to parents, I would just say, know thy daughter. Know your daughter. I have a sister a little younger than me in age, and she was in like plays and musicals and was very more overtly outgoing than I was. And she would have loved that. She would have been like, cool, I get a bunch of attention. But for me, I wasn't like that. So if you're listening and you're thinking, what am I going to do when my daughter gets her first period? Just ask yourself, who is my daughter? Does
Yeah.
she want attention? And if she does, you'll know exactly what to do.
I think that's great advice, Jamie. I think you're right. Like we can get this idea like you have to like celebrate, like, pump her up, like this is the greatest thing, like make her believe it's not the
Hmm.
worst thing in the world to have a
Hmm.
period. And then maybe we can go overboard, especially for a personality that's like, hey, I just want to kind of be intuitive with this or nurturing, like you said. So I think that's great advice.
Yeah. And you know
I'll
what? If my mom, I was going to say this, if my mom knew that, she would have done. I mean, it's
Yeah.
almost like we get so stuck in this idea that we need to follow this script of celebrating because we're so afraid if we don't, what will happen, you
Yeah.
know? I'm sorry, but I interrupted you, Teresa.
No, but it makes me think of my oldest daughter. She was much more, I don't know, kind of like I would say, she just wanted to be innocent and pure for a really long time. And she actually
Mhm.
verbalized it. Even if I would
Yeah.
want to tell her about the menstrual cycle and cervical mucus and things, she kind of looked at me and she was always like, Mom, I don't know if I'm ready yet, And she said, remember one day we were talking about something. She's like, Mom, I just still want to be in the backyard playing Little House on the Prairie with Lucy and
Oh.
Emma, you know?
Oh.
And she just kind of was telling me, like, can we just hold off? Like, I just want to maintain like my little girlness for as
Mm.
long as possible. And, for some girls, unfortunately, they get their period sooner than they, really like are prepared for in a sense emotionally, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, and so when my daughter got her first period, honestly, I always look at this as like this is a major period story for me because I was the period mom, right? Like I'm the one who knows everything
Yeah.
about
Right.
menstrual cycles, or I treat women with menstrual cycle problems. And I feel like I totally messed it up. I mean, I completely messed it up. And so if you're out there as a mom and you're like, gosh, I really didn't feel like I did this one right, like I didn't. And I'll always regret it. But it's like, we learn from everything. But my daughter had an accident at school because I
Mm.
thought I prepared her after when she got her first period, and I hadn't really enough. And
Mhm.
I should have just kept her home. And afterwards, I remember a mom said to me, she's like, well, when my daughter got her first period, we just stayed home, the first day and just kind of figured it out. And it like hurt my heart to hear that because I was like, that is so logical.
Oh.
And I'm like, why didn't I do that? Like, it's your very first period. You have no idea. She didn't know
Right.
how often. She was nervous to change her pad. And then when
Mm.
she had an accident, unfortunately, it was public and
Mm.
um
Oh.
and with boys involved in the
Oh.
classroom. But I'll always forget this. And this is a shout out to all women who support women and young women who support women. There was a girl who had already had her period for probably a couple of years, and she saw Anna's look of distress, and she saw there was literally like a little blood on the chair of the classroom
Mm.
chair. And she quickly went over to Anna. She pushed the chair in so nobody could see. And then she walked her up right up to the teacher because Anna was just frozen.
Oh.
And
Oh.
then, but Anna is now in her 20s, and we always joke about it. I mean, like, I literally cannot tell the story without crying. Like, I'm literally getting emotional right now
Oh,
because,
Teresa.
again, um, excuse me, it's your daughter
Mm.
and her emotions.
Mm.
And it was sad. And then
Mm.
my husband, God bless him, he was home. So he literally goes to Walgreens and she's in the office now.
Mm.
And he brings every tampon pad,
Oh.
size of everything because this is so dad, like panicked and was
Mm.
like, what does she need? What does she need? And
Mhm.
brought it up to school. But
Oh.
I mean, it was one of those things that was hard and she got through it. And we joke about it a little bit now that she'll always be remembered at school as the girl who had the period accident.
Oh, poor
But again, it was so hard on me
Mm.
because of the fact of I am the Hormone Genius podcast woman. Like, again,
Yeah.
it was like, for real, Teresa, like, how did you mess that up?
Mm.
So, and there's myself humbling myself to say, like,
Mm.
no parent ever thinks they
Mhm.
ever get this right.
Mhm.
And we're all just doing our best.
That's right. Oh my gosh. Oh, Teresa, thanks for sharing that. And something that I've noticed too, I think that has gotten hopefully better is that there is now, more social awareness of the period, either whether it be of young boys, like there is a gal that used to babysit for my youngest daughter in home, and she told me that she has one son, and she said, hey, Billy, I don't know the son's name, I can't remember. But if you ever see a gal at your age with a little blood on her pants, it's called a period, always bring an extra sweatshirt and put it in your locker and then give it to her so she can wrap it around her waist. I'm like, wow, what a beautiful way to support these young girls. And it like maturity of this boy that he could hear that from his mother and then actually like take that very seriously. It's this protective, innate like nature of boy, that could be there
Right,
depending on
totally.
the maturity. But something that I know my daughter has said, so I'm like, okay, don't forget to, pack your period stuff, like your pads and maybe an extra pair of underwear, all these things. Oh, it's okay, mom. It's fine. I'm like, well, it's not really fine. Like, just be safe to, just pack it. You'll be thankful. No, it's okay. The nurse is really nice. Like, she's always really nice. So anytime any of us get our period, it's almost like a fun thing that they get to go go to the nurse and then get their period stuff. I'm like, whoa, whatever that school's doing, they're doing it right. Like it's like
Yeah.
not a big deal. They want to see the nurse. The nurse talks to them about the period. I mean, I'm thinking, well, again, it's this community effort. So anyway, but thanks for sharing that, Teresa, because I am sure you felt like, what in the heck? Were you surprised by it when it came? Did you think that it would be coming as soon as it did with Anna? I'm kind of going back to that story.
Yeah, no, she was, I mean, we had been talking, we had done all the things.
Okay.
I was aware that it was probably approaching. We even did the discharge is, that's a sign it's coming. And, so when she did, it happened, I remember in the evening, and she had school the next day. And I asked her if she was ready to, did she want to go? And I said, okay, we're going to pack your pads. I'm like, you
Yeah.
have to, change it. But again, what I didn't realize is just how you can say all the words and you can say like that's what you need to do, but you don't realize that when a girl gets to school, she really is fearful
Yeah.
of really how to implement that. And so I
Right.
think she just thought one pad would it would just hold off, like she could make and not have to worry about it. And it just, like your daughter, she was like, yeah, I'll just, if I haven't, it seems to be full. But, and this goes to my daughter's personality. She probably was enough kind of like, I don't know, I say like innocent, and it just was her personality and the whole thing. And if I would have done it all over again, I just would have kept her home and like let her figure
Yeah.
it out
Right.
in her own home and not put her in
Right.
front of everybody else on the day of her first period.
Yeah.
And like, again, that makes complete sense to me.
Right.
But at the time, I thought she felt confident. And I was like, yeah, you got this, girl. You got this. And I was like, we're just going to,
Yeah.
just go on anyway.
Right. Right.
But so, yeah, I mean, if you're out there and your daughter's that age, again, Jamie and I, just in terms of just a review of what to expect, I mean, I think there's the logical like changes of the body or what we see. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's something, it's not like it comes out of the blue without those changes.
Right.
Your daughter's going to get the breast buds, she gets the pubic hair, she gets taller, she gets, a little, maybe sometimes a little heavier around the hips and the thighs, because that's just all a process of the hormones that are really telling and signaling in the body that it's time to become a procreative person.
Right.
And, a question gets asked a lot, are girls getting their period earlier than they used to? I mean, yeah, unfortunately. And so it's just hard because you just wish all girls could maybe get their period when they're more like 16 to 18, because that just seems more logical. Like, we aren't going to have your babies till the 20s. Like, why does it have to?
Right.
But when I think about like hormones and how protective they are to the body, like, and we've talked about how important ovulation is to health. I mean, maybe from that standpoint, it was needed because the girl's body does need that protection, and her bones are forming at that age significantly, and her brain is forming significantly at that age. So from that standpoint, it makes sense. These hormones aren't just about making babies, they're about growing and maturing our whole entire body, not just even our reproductive system.
Oh, amen to that. And I think that is the number one missing bit of advice. If I could give advice to any mother listening, like share that part. There's no shame in that part. Maybe you're talking about Anna and how she was, didn't want to necessarily be like this woman yet. She still wanted to be a kid. But in terms of getting your first period, going through puberty, where now you're transitioning from like kid to woman, young woman, that's the truth, and that's the fact, and it may make women feel uncomfortable or young girls feel uncomfortable. But the other fact is that actually this is protective. It's for the health of your growing body. And so there's something that doesn't seem awkward or weird or uncomfortable about that, from a fellow like, previous young gal who was uncomfortable about womanhood. I think if I knew, oh, it's for my health, it's protective, and especially because I took track very seriously. You need strong bones. You don't keep getting stress fractures. It's good to get your period. It's a sign of health. It's a sign of yeah, just recovery and being able to, run fast, like bringing it down to the what matters to that young woman is important. But like you said, so when we get our period, we'll kind of walk through kind of more of the biological, just as a high level overview. And then I really want to talk about like this idea of how do we know it's not something else? Like if there's something concerning with our daughter. So we have the hypothalamus, okay, and the hypothalamus, we call it the HPO, like hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis. It's what the feedback loop is for like turning on this ovary and getting these reproductive hormones going. So we're going to call that the HPO, not HBO. So the hypothalamus, it wakes up, like it starts to like warm up, and this hypothalamus, again, it's like your body's hormonal thermostat. It's going to start kind of sending out these messages to the pituitary gland to then pulse out to the ovaries to start producing these ovarian hormones. But the question is like, how does the body know? Like, how does the hypothalamus know to wake up? Because it can be different for every young woman. And one thing is just genetic. There's not a strong answer, but one is genetic. And then the other one is body fat, you know? So you need to have at least 17% body fat for get that first ovulation, and then 22% body fat to maintain that period. So if body fat is important, but also genetics are important. And then we think about like environmental factors, xenoestrogens, all this and that. I think that's again another reason why young women are getting their periods sooner. But again, in childhood, this thermostat is mostly quiet, and then during puberty, this hypothalamus pituitary ovarian process starts warming up. So then that's when we start seeing these symptoms and signs of cervical mucus. Because prior to that, like you're saying, Teresa, like a couple years prior to your first period, you're getting, these breast buds, you're getting taller, there's pubic hair forming, like you're starting to grow and become this woman. But again, that's like this big boogeyman question. I know for me, I just kept thinking, my daughter looks like she is a woman now. Where on earth is her first period? I mean, I kept thinking that this whole last year, like, where is it? And sure enough, it came. So again, if you're wondering, when is my daughter getting her first period? Well, think about that. Think about when did you get your first period? And think about, does she have enough body fat for her first period? So that's important. Teresa, because you have two daughters, so you have Anna and you shared that story. How did Anna's story with her first period, and maybe you don't want to share this on podcast, maybe keep it vague, but how do your two stories differ between your two daughters in terms of the second daughter's experience?
Yeah. I mean, I think again, because of what happened with Anna, I mean, we just really made sure Rachel was totally prepared. And like, I just gave her the options of like, what is it going to be when you get your first? And Rachel was a totally different girl. So she's much more just like, I don't know if the word might be precocious, but she's interested in everything, kind of more bold, I guess, confident in some ways. And so it just wasn't a big deal. It was just kind of like, yeah, whatever. Got my period, mom. Move on.
Right.
So yeah, just totally different. And in a good way, it was just a different experience. Like I said, we just learned from everything. But, my oldest daughter, she's now pregnant and having her first baby. So full circle, right? Like,
oh my gosh.
Again, experiences of life.
Again? When is she
February. In February.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah,
Third trimester. Wow.
Yeah, here we are, just full circle with all that. And, Jamie, I know you probably know this, but I'm just going to announce it too, because I don't know when it'll come out, but I am writing a book about puberty, and it's going to come out, and it's a beautiful book. It's, the first part of the title will be Your Brilliant Body. And it will have a Christian, kind of theological kind of bent to it as well. So for all those of you who are Christian Catholic, this book will really be beautiful, and it will give kind of an overview of all the things you want your daughter to know, even about boys, even though it's written for kind of moms and daughters really to use together. So, but excited about that. Like I said,
awesome.
It'll probably be in 2026, but I don't want to make any guarantees because books take a long time, especially if you want them to have beautiful graphics. They take a while. So still working on that, but that'll be coming out. But Jamie, while we're kind of talking about those types of things, let's, hype up also the full spectrum of puberty to perimenopause, right? Because we talk about perimenopause is almost like a reverse puberty. And after this, after I kind of talk about the perimenopause program, we'll go back and talk about, kind of what happens emotionally with puberty. But the perimenopause program is out, you guys. And it's $97 right now. It's a great deal because of the content, and our little awesome kind of Hormone Genius helper, Lisa Applegate, she reviewed it just recently, and she just said, guys, there is so much in here. And she was impressed. So I just want to encourage all of you to take a look at the perimenopause program. It's on our, of course, main landing page, hormonegenius.com. And you can sign up. It is an ebook, a very in-depth ebook about perimenopause, all the changes, but it's really based on 4 pillars of health so that you can navigate perimenopause, so you can understand your hormonal changes, and then gives you all of the kind of treatment options in a sense, and lifestyle options that will help you feel your best in perimenopause.
Yeah.
So we're so excited about that. And then lastly, We Heart Nutrition, always a part of our podcast, as you guys know. And you can always look into their incredible supplements. I just got a package from them, and I was so excited because I handed my sons their men's multivitamin, and they were like, great, Mom, thanks. I'll be taking these. My boys they're believers, they're believers that we don't get enough nutrition from just food anymore. And I was grateful to have We Heart send me a men's multivitamin plus all the other things, the magnesium and omegas, and their perimenopause multivitamin too. So 20% off with the code GENIUS, 20% off if you go to We Heart Nutrition with your first order using the code GENIUS. And now, Jamie, let's talk about puberty again.
All right. We talked about what happens before, again, our first period. Our body is developing into a woman. But also another predictor that your period is coming is that you're getting this cervical mucus, like Teresa mentioned in her Instagram live video. And so I remember being so, again, very confused and grossed out, weirded out when in my underwear I noticed this discharge, thinking, do I have an infection? This is nasty. Am I going to tell my mother? Heck no, I'm not. I remember being at a sleepover and having a friend of mine tell me that she was noticing that too. And that's when the lights clicked on. I thought, well, maybe this is actually normal. But I still, it took me to getting into college, actually, to even know what that was. That's ridiculous that it took me being in college. And you better believe your daughters are noticing that. You noticed it, and they're not telling a soul. They're like, again, secretly hiding this, what they may see as shameful or gross. And that's sad because that's a sign of health, as we know. And that's sad.
I got to tell you,
it makes me so mad.
Yeah, I got to tell this story. And I've told it like way, way long time ago, but I was doing a talk at a high school, and, I'm giving my spiel about the hormones and the menstrual cycle, and it was a co-ed talk. And so, but it was all the high school girls. It was a small rural high school. So it's about 100 kids. And I start talking about cervical mucus. And of course, you're like, I get it. This is weird. And mucus is weird. And I'm just going to but we're going to get real here, guys. This is our bodies and this is how it works. And so I asked the audience of girls, I was like, so how many of you guys, notice in between your 2 periods, you get this discharge, this mucusy discharge. And of course, no one raises their hands. And I'm like, all right, guys, this isn't just, oh, I don't have it maybe as much as the girl next to me. No, everybody gets it. And when you're younger, you usually get plenty. So I know you're noticing it. And so finally, one girl starts slowly raising her hand. And then it just took a couple other girls to kind of look around and to feel the comfort. And then all of a sudden, these 9-10 girls literally collapse upon each other, almost like that. Like you said, they're like, oh my gosh, you get that too?
Yeah.
They didn't know. They didn't know, and they were embarrassed because they're like, what if nobody else gets that? And I just thought, that's sad, that all these girls, again, they're in high school, that none of them knew that was normal. And so, yes, in that Instagram reel, what did I say? Women, the last thing your daughter will notice before they ever bleed is the discharge before the first period comes. So talk to them about it. It is normal. It's not an infection. And it will continue between their two periods throughout their whole life. And it is the sign of the main event of their cycle. So it's just our like mission in this is really for people to understand cervical mucus and not to be afraid of talking about it.
Exactly. And I think one reason people are afraid to talk about it is who on this good green earth wants to say the word mucus? Zero people. So use red flow for your period. You could say period. I don't think period sounds like a weird word, but your period is your red flow. Your cervical mucus is your white flow. Just call it your white flow. To me, that seems way less disgusting and nasty for a little girl. Again, as we grow and mature, it's not a big deal. But for your girls, just talk about white flow, talk about discharge. That sounds less weird than mucus. And the thing too is that it's not just they get this mucus, this discharge, white flow, and then a couple weeks later they get their period. Like this can go on for months where they're getting this discharge and they're noticing and it doesn't and I think that's why it can get kind of confusing because it seems maybe random when in reality we know that again their brain's getting online. They're trying to they're that reproductive season of their life is starting to activate. And so I have here in my notes, it normally is around 3 to 9 months after noticing that cervical mucus that they get their first bleed.
Great. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. What about Jamie, the emotional stuff? Like
oh my gosh, yeah.
Changes. Like, I mean, I think every mom kind of dreads this phase for this reason. And I'm not saying like every girl like has to go off the rails, in terms of their emotions, but these hormones are definitely a change to the brain. And I think the body is just trying to like recalibrate, you could say, and just get used to the new hormones circulating in there. And that can cause some emotional changes as well. So what's your experience with that? Or do we have any advice for parents on how to handle it even?
Yeah. Well, I'd say, when we think about fetal development in the womb, and we're thinking about, these moments where hormones wash over us. There's moments in our life where like our hormones wash over us, where there's like these big hormonal changes. One of those is like in the womb, and then when a baby is born, I believe, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. There's another kind of hormone wash, and then like these girls and boys are kind of like each other hormonally, like in their toddler life. There's nothing big, huge happening. There's like these washes that are in certain time points of development. Another big wash is when a girl is going through puberty. And so that's a lot of data and a lot of information. And Teresa, you and I have talked about this before, how some women are just more hormonally sensitive. So if there's a big fluctuation of hormones, whether up or down, maybe that woman gets a headache. Maybe she does have a mood swing, where other women have less of a sensitivity to these hormone fluctuations. So I feel a little bit like the experience a girl goes through in puberty likely will be kind of a data for her experience maybe going, and that's just more of a theory. But if this puberty, if these hormone swings are really affecting her physically, I don't think that probably will change much going into her life. I mean, it's just a theory. So if you're sensitive with puberty, you may be more sensitive to those mood swings, headaches as you're cycling. Just again, theoretical. So it's important to know that. And what's also important to know is this. Because puberty is the very, like, or our first onset of our period, we're cycling now, it's irregular. The first, 3 years, it's irregular. So I just had a question yesterday from a mother who has a daughter who's 14. The daughter who's 14 thinks that something's really wrong with her because she's gone a couple months without getting her period and it's not regular. I said, it's okay. Because the first, 2 to 3 years, your body again is getting into the cycle. It's okay. It's going to be irregular. Same thing's true as you exit your childbearing years, like into perimenopause, approaching menopause, there's less regularity. But guess what happens? What do women complain about when there's these mood swings and shifts in perimenopause? They complain about their mood swings, right? They complain about, we create a whole course about it, Teresa, about how we can support ourselves in the perimenopause phase. And there should be and needs to be compassion in the perimenopause phase. But guess what? that same thing, in a sense, the entrance into, the cycling life is happening, and it's still very irregular. So where is our compassion for these young girls who for the first time are experiencing some of these emotions? So again, it's very concentrated at puberty, and it's very concentrated. When I say concentrated, I mean these maybe more of these mood swings in the way we respond at the beginning of our childbearing years and at the end of our childbearing years. And so I feel like that's kind of where I'm becoming more maybe outspoken or more passionate about that. Is again, it's almost like we know puberty's happening, but we complain more about our daughters being hormonal and being teenagers, but there's not a lot of compassion for her mental health or her needs like we would demand as adults, as women in perimenopause. You know what I mean?
Honestly, that's, I think, really profound, Jamie. I don't know if I've thought about it that way before, and so yes, like we oftentimes kind of, in a sense, treat children like children when we need to have more compassion because they're little humans growing. And yeah, you get wise in your, as you get older and you realize like we have a lot more compassion for so much. So I think that's great, Jamie, the way that you're saying it.
Yeah.
So if we think about even the perimenopause like program and what we're doing with that, I mean, a lot of the stuff and the pillars that we're using for health, I mean, in some ways, a lot of them still apply to these young women
Yeah.
who are going through puberty, like stress reduction, getting enough sleep, getting enough protein and nutrition, moving your body. Those are all the things also that we should be focusing on with these girls going through these challenges of their bodies changing. And I do think the nutrition aspect is probably one of the biggest things, Jamie, because growing bodies need proper nutrition, and particularly they need like the building blocks of tissue, which is protein. So, that's something I think we can focus on. And I know for some of my patients, even my patients who ask me about their daughters, I oftentimes say, is your daughter getting enough protein? Is your daughter getting vitamin D? Is she getting a quality multivitamin, especially if she's in sports, because she's running through her nutrients faster, especially iron, B vitamins. We take supplements as adults, but we forget that our kids are growing and they almost need it more. We're done growing, so and it can make a huge difference to get the nutrients right in a growing daughter that's starting her periods.
Yep, exactly. And so I'll share a little bit about my story, since I kind of led off the podcast with that. But something that you may notice in your daughters, again, are these mood shifts as we're talking about. And again, what is normal versus what's abnormal? Well, we know when estrogen is ramping up on the scene, we're going to see more energy from our daughter. Maybe she has a bit more anxiety. And so as estrogen is increasing, therefore she's noticing that cervical mucus. It's important for her to have productive ways to exert that energy. I think about trapped energy. I think about that anxiety is really trapped energy, meaning let's get out. So go on a run, go play tennis, go on a walk around the mall, get that energy out, and there will be less anxiety in theory. So that's a tip. And then after ovulation, again, because our progesterone levels can be very temperamental, especially as we're newly cycling, those PMS, mood swings, insomnia, difficulty sleeping, all of this, like overstimulation, all of that is very normal. But getting good sleep as much as possible, grounding, thinking about journaling. I mean, these are very mature ways to manage this. And as a young girl, it's probably very difficult. But I would even say, daughter, like TV needs to be off by X amount. There's less resilience. So think about progesterone as being very finicky. So just be more mindful. Like if we're going to eat well, really make sure we're eating well after ovulation, although during ovulation is important as well. Make sure you're really protecting your sleep routines, reducing overstimulation, because with my daughter, she is, on the spectrum, and she feels things more intensely than most. So she's definitely sensitive to the hormonal ups and downs. But with her, I again thought it was just hormones, but I knew it wasn't. That's what I was told. But for her, she actually had an infection that caused inflammation of her brain. And it caused extreme behavior change where she couldn't leave the house, she couldn't be in a car, she was afraid to eat and drink water. I mean, it was terrible. And again, what did I hear? Oh, it's just her hormones. It's just her hormones. I'm like, seriously? I mean, I don't think so. I think there's something else going on. And sure enough, I was right. There was something else going on. And it took a lot of testing. It took testing her gut. Is she absorbing her B vitamins, which turns out she doesn't, like B12 genetically. She's very weak in it's not MTHFR, but it's a gene FTU2 or something like that. It doesn't break down B12. And so it was only through navigating these additional testings, Teresa, that we soon discovered it wasn't just her hormones, actually. It was probably like gasoline on the fire. It made it worse. For sure, it's not like it didn't play a part. So with her, we started high quality vitamins and omegas right away, magnesium glycinate every single day she takes. She takes an activated form of B12. I mean, we do all of this work for her and we noticed a huge change and it's been a big, wonderful miracle. But parents, if your daughter or son, if any of your children are in that age group, but they're suffering terribly, and it's more than just like moodiness or just being kind of mean and nasty, um, do additional testing, get your lab work, go talk to the doctor, see are they imbalanced in some of these essential minerals and nutrients that they need to function well. Because I would say if these young girls, this would be one last thing I want to say, Teresa. So we talked about how we need to be compassionate for these girls going through this big shift in their life. Get lab work done. I mean, if your body is now using more energy, there's this big shift in again, energy needs, how they're acting with their behavior and their sensitivities to hormones. But, our vitamin D, maybe we have really low vitamin D. Maybe our B vitamins are off. If our children don't have good minerals, if their labs are showing that there is something off, we need to support those things ASAP before this daughter of ours goes through this huge shift. So I'd say that's another big tip I would give parents is to know what you're actually working with.
I think that's super smart. I am always a fan of drawing labs and getting vitamin levels. So I think that's very smart. So as we're wrapping up, the last thing I'll touch upon, Jamie, is just when is a period something so off it needs to be addressed by a healthcare professional? And so a lot of times, like you said, there's irregularity. Okay, irregularity, no big deal. My period comes every 3 months for a bit. Maybe there's some bleeding that just doesn't seem like a real period in there. Maybe I have one period that lasts, 2 days, and then another period that lasted like 9 days. So the irregularity, and that's because of the fact that the hormones have not settled into their nice strategic roller coaster. They're doing something much more variable. But when is it enough irregular or enough of a problem, you see a healthcare professional? And that's when, one, there's pain. Pain is not normal, especially pain that isn't just, a Tylenol or an ibuprofen takes it away. Two, the bleeding is excessively heavy. And I think all of us can kind of get a sense of what that is, or if the bleeding is excessively prolonged. And those things do need to be addressed. Now, the common OBGYN or even pediatrician, a lot of times you come in and you start talking about your daughter's period problem. What is the first thing they're going to want to put your daughter on? Birth control pills. And it is the dumbest thing ever for the vast majority of things because, number one, it's not necessary to balance the hormones and to get the cycle straightened back out. All you really need is natural progesterone to do that. Number two, again, in a growing body and growing bones, birth control, and I think we'll realize this as another 20 years comes by, it is stunting their actual development. And possibly stunting their brain development too, because like we talked at the beginning, they're not getting those beautiful endocrine hormones that God made for them. So use your judgment. If see a healthcare professional that is more aligned with your beliefs in a sense about hormones and wanting to not use synthetic hormones, and sometimes that can be challenging, but advocate for your daughter if that's truly what you think is right. So as we wrap up, Janie, I'll let you see if there's anything else that you think we should talk about. Otherwise, I think, this hopefully can be really helpful for women who are having daughters go through puberty.
Yeah, awesome. I'd say some practical resources is there is a Fem app. It's really easy to access. There's also like a teen Fem presentation. That would be awesome if there's Fem instructors in your community. There is a teen Fem program. So encourage your daughters to increase their cycle knowledge by just charting their cycle. And even you can chart it too. Like I like to kind of keep track of when my daughter starts her period and how she's acting. I like to track that stuff. So Fem, buy the book, The Happy Girl's Guide to Being Whole. As a parent, know what's going on. And then of course, Teresa is going to be, like she mentioned, releasing a book next year, the year, or, sometime within the year, hopefully. So that'll be good information as well. And then, magnesium never hurts a fly. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it does. But just add magnesium glycinate to your daily routine for your daughter. It'll help in so many ways. And we've just noticed, we give a lot of things to our daughter, supplemental, but I noticed magnesium is one that rarely do I ever see anybody, having any issues with.
There's probably more resources, Jamie, we could put too in the notes. Like Natural Womanhood has a period genius course for young women. We know Christina Venezuela from Pearl and Thistle has resources for young women. There's a program called Cherry Blossom. I know it's like, I think a lot of moms want to know what are the resources out there. So Jamie and I will try to put those in the show notes as well and expand on that. And the Fem app is really great. I would recommend that. Or just getting pen and paper and coloring a chart together. There's lots on Etsy, actually. You could just download period charts on Etsy. But Jamie, thank you so much. This is a great episode, and we'll see you real soon.
All right. Thanks, Teresa. Thanks for listening to the Hormone Genius Podcast. Please remember to share our podcast with your friends and family, and also follow us on social media. If you were not aware, we have a YouTube channel. So if you could like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay in the loop with all of our latest episodes, we would appreciate that. Thank you so much for your support. We are excited to journey alongside you as you discover the beauty and the genius of your hormones.